Let's say it is 10:15 a.m. and I am going to be happy to call this meeting to order. This is our September 18th, 2014 board meeting. And I'm going to take the roll at this time. And if we can, please begin with Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Okay.
Ludlow, here.
Thompson, here.
Allerton, here. Hernandez, here.
Stanford.
Ferguson, here.
Lisa Elovich, present.
And also present for our record are our General Counsel.
Terry Tracy, General Counsel, present.
And
Jessica Hamlin.
And observing from our Public Information Office are
Linda Foglia.
Oh, boy, it's good to meet you. Yeah.
so you hopefully can talk a little bit later. You had some nice compliments on a recent decision from our Public Information Office. And filming for us is Laura. And Laura, I'm sorry, what's your last name? Colucci. Thank you, Laura. We have no public attendees. Everyone here is an employee of the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. The next item will be our minutes of August 21st, 2014. Has everyone had an opportunity to receive and review these minutes? I do have one correction to the minutes that I didn't catch before we sent them out to all of you. It's on page 2 in new business under medical parole, the third bullet. The report actually reads from June 1992 through December 2013. And so that should be a correction in our record. Are there any other corrections to recommend or suggest? Okay. Is there a motion to accept the minutes with the correction that's been made?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions?
I do. I was not here.
Staying
Okay.
on top here.
So Commissioner Elovich, Commissioner Julie Smith, Commissioner Ludlow abstained, and Thompson abstained because they were not present at last month's meeting. Thank you. The motion is carried. On to our old business, the post-board reports. I want to thank everybody for sending your weekly post-board reports for the interviews for which you are the lead commissioner to all of us, and including in that Talissa. Talissa compiles the 4 board reports for the week, each week, and we send them to the Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision over Program Services, who help us to prepare for those interviews by providing the inmate file and records and other documents that we need. And I can say that recently we have seen an upsurge in interest in making sure that the facilities that still need additional training are being directed appropriately. And that the concerns that you raise in your post-board reports are being addressed. As an aside to that, you should know that in addition to your post-board reports, the facility staff also do post-board reports, and I've made an earnest effort every time I get one to send them to the board members who conducted that particular facility's interviews. I can't say that I'm getting them all yet, but that is a goal. And I've been in consistent communication, again, with Program Services Assistant Commissioner to make sure that all of the facilities know that if they're sending these out, they should be sending copies to the parole board. And it helps us because you can compare your notes. You can compare what you've put in your post-board report to what the facility staff is putting in their post-board reports. Their post-board reports unlike most of ours, will often have the exact inmate name and DIN number associated with postponements. Sometimes we just count the number. They will actually put the name and the DIN number, which might be helpful for you to know. But it is good to compare notes. It is good that they know that you have it to look at after the fact, and it's good for them to know that we all are seeing what each of you write in your post-board reports so that we can be on the lookout for consistencies or improvements down the line when we're at that board. So I thank you for that. I do have a request in your packet that you've received today, and the members that are absent will get it via email, is a format. Everybody basically is using this format, but some not the form itself. It would be greatly helpful, I think, to you and to us in forwarding these reports if we all use the same format. I think if you have any ideas of how to make this format better, more inclusive of important information, please let me know. But if you could use this, you can keep it as a Word document and just fill it in each week when you have board reports to submit. And you can save a copy for your own records, and then, create a new form each month. You can write over last month's after saving a copy, and it shouldn't be too hard in terms of computer work to use this fillable form. And if you need some help doing that, Talissa will work with you.
Did you also send this to us electronically so we can save it on our computer?
I will have her do that. I wanted you to see it.
Do you have the new form?
I might want to add that, bear in mind that reports like these could be subject to FOIL requests too. And so in your preparation of these reports, remain cognizant of that. So be as objective as you can in reporting out what occurred. And of course, given the general strictures of the Freedom of Information Law, evaluative information is always subject to the redactions allowed for under the exemptions. But you should be aware that reports that are normally generated, that are generated in the normal course of business could, I'm not saying are or have been, but could possibly be. So you should be cognizant of
Could it be
things.
viewed, though, as work product?
No.
What about interagency?
It's the sort of stuff that is the very substance of what the Freedom of Information Law is designed to get at. You're reporting about how government is doing business, and that's fine and well, and that's why I just want to remind you all that in reporting how it progressed, objective information is absolutely fine about things. And that's what I think the Parole Board report is for, objective reporting out about how things went, cases heard, postponements, reasons for postponements, things like that. And that's, I want to remind you all of that. Okay.
So superfluous editorial comment.
Not needed.
Not needed.
It would make more work for our public information officer to have to go through reports and evaluate what's evaluative. This and that. These reports, as I see them developing, and I find them very useful as well. When it's just objectively stated, cases that came on, people who were produced, sometimes people not produced for medical reasons. I just like to see it. Postponements for sentencing minutes or postponements because something hasn't come in from a DOJ. That's very valuable information to have, and that's fine. It is what it is, and. There'll be backup documents to support it. There's transcripts made of these things that happen. So, but I'm just putting that out there just so that you remember that as we're preparing these reports, which is very good for us as we move forward, especially, as the chairwoman said, sharing with the SORCs and ORCs and the deputy superintendents, because we're all coming together and we're making boards run smoothly and have case records or case files put together in the way we'd like to see them. We don't need to get into the editorializing, as you said earlier. Yeah. Just the good facts.
And certainly, if there is any confidential information, if, for example, say something is postponed for an OMH report, and you mention the inmate's name, I'm not sure if that would be something that would be redacted.
I think
it would because it's HIPAA.
I think we would redact it. Yes, I think things like that are subject to redaction.
So,
yeah.
But again, it's just the facts. It's not necessarily the details
Right.
of someone's medical history.
Right. Right.
Chair, just in terms of this report and in terms of the staff reports, is there a form for the staff reports? And the reason I ask is this, is there some things like getting the names of all the staff when you're doing 5 facilities and you have, the 2 locations and then you have people coming in and out. The number one commissioner, especially with all that's been going on lately, is you're getting all the questions from other commissioners. If you've been here for a while, you're getting the questions from staff. You're trying to prepare and organize the board and get it scheduled. You're trying to keep a log of cases that have problems. You have your fellow commissioners telling you to make notes about things they wanted included in the post-board report. So take attendance. I think maybe that's something we should push off to the ORC, since they're going to be, the SORC is going to be the one that's in charge of that facility. Who better to know the full names of everybody? I think that's something that they should probably take charge of. The other thing is in my post-board report, I had a section that I had added regarding postponements. I thought, there was a value to that for us to know how much postponements have changed in the past several years, especially since the merger. So there's not a section here for that. Do you still want that information? And if you do, where would you want that?
I think that information is helpful. I do. So what I would suggest is, if any of you have some recommended enhancements, changes to this document, mark it up. Mark up the hard copy and send it back to us in the mail. Okay? And in the meantime, continue to add anything else you think might be missing, like, for example, for this week's reports. I wouldn't suggest that you stop doing something that makes sense to do. To your first question, does the facility also have a uniform format? I can't say that. And remember, I said at the outset, I'm not getting them all. When you do your reports, you do them for every facility that you interviewed during that board. When we get the reports from facility, we only get them facility by facility. So say there were 3 facilities in your panel this week, I might get 1 or 2 of those because they're not yet sending them all to us. So, and they come separated because they're only doing their facility. They're not doing everybody's. So I'm getting 1 from the SORC at 1 facility when there were 10 facilities. You know what I mean? So since that's not being done consistently and uniformly, I'm not even assuming that the form that they're using is the same. So, but that's a recommendation that we might make to program services. In addition to them sending them all to us, they should be using the same format. I would think that they have a reason for wanting facility staff to send them, so it would suit their purposes, as I think it suits ours to have a uniform format.
And I just want to piggyback on, as I always say in the meetings, I want to piggyback on Commissioner Ferguson because he always brings up great ideas. In some ways, I don't mind writing down the names, but there are certain facilities where they change shifts every 2 hours. As one facility out west in particular, which I find very cumbersome. So they change shifts every 2 hours. So we're sitting there for 12 hours possibly, and the shift changes every 2 hours. So it becomes, a writing assignment for us to try and detail the times and the dates. And because we're making a legal transcript with the court reporter, it can be very cumbersome to have to include everybody's name that's in, and then people walking in and out. I ask people not to walk in and out unless we're done with an interview. So, and I see, and as far as this, when it comes on, of course, reading on the BlackBerry can be very difficult as well, but it can be very confusing, but I'll do my best with whatever the consensus is for everyone. I see the value in this, and Deb McCoy has asked us to give specific inmate names and DIN numbers now, with the issue is. So I'll try and accommodate that as well. But, this report, which was once very simple, is now becoming something that we're going to have to spend a lot of time on. And I'll do whatever the consensus is. But
I don't think it makes sense if there's 50 different people coming in and out of the room all day to put all 50 names, they don't even do anything. The majority of the people that are coming in and out in different shifts. What we've been doing consistently, well, what I've seen most commissioners doing, is you put the main SORC that's in charge, and then whatever ORC or APA is with that person. and then whatever main people are on the other side, sometimes we don't even put the other side, but the main people on the other side. I mean, some of the facilities, they put people in and out all day long. It doesn't really make sense to put 50 names on it.
It's really one facility that does it, but, and you know, and I agree with Commissioner Ferguson. You know, if they would get, when I was out west recently, I asked for a list. They couldn't even, you know, they were having trouble coming up with a list of who was in and out of the room with the time. So, you know, I think that is their responsibility to provide that for us.
Of course, I analyzed every single line of the report, and I'm anal retentive, so it was really challenging. For instance, when I'm looking at this form, and you have staff ABC, and I understand facility A, facility B, facility C. Well, for an anal retentive person, do you mean the staff in the room with you or the staff on the other side? And when I divided my report, and you know, I did it so I included the people in, and then I broke it out, and these were the people on the other side.
Right.
So I'm just asking, when we do our consensus, for those people who are new to the board and will be doing these reports, you know, to say staff, it's important whether I know whether you're talking about staff inside the room or staff out. Do I have to
And
record?
I break it up.
Who?
I would say both.
And break it up, okay.
And I would also say, I mean, you made the point of the legal record being accurate. I think according to ACA standards too, we have the responsibility to make sure that only people who should be in that room are in that room. If in fact the facility is sending people in there as runners and they're sitting through interviews, that's not appropriate.
Well,
and they need to understand that.
And they have. Actually, people were coming in the beginning, maybe a year ago. People were sitting in during their break, and I'm like, this isn't entertainment. This isn't a break room. If you're not working the board, there's really no reason for you to be in there. So I have asked people or told whoever the SORC, former parole officer, senior parole officer, that's not okay. So only people who are working the board should be in the board.
And also the stenographers take down every single person that's in the room on both sides. They keep track of everybody that's on the facility side in addition to the people that are in the room with us. So if we do need a record of everybody that's been in that room, the stenographer should have a record of that.
But they will only know, though, if somebody tells them.
Well, like we have.
We're switching out now. I'm coming in now.
They're supposed to be taking the other
Actually,
side.
some do and some
Some
don't.
don't.
See, what we have to do here is get a consensus across all facilities and all court reporters, because some court reporters do take both and some court reporters don't. So,
I would piggyback on what and then is that there's an adequate record of who's working and who's working where. Corrections doesn't have people just come in and go wherever they want. They're all assigned specific places at specific times. I think the cumbersome nature of us taking attendance, like some kindergarten class, is not necessary. Maybe having the main SORC who's responsible for the board at that prison that day, I think that should be sufficient information. If we want more than that, we can ask corrections to pull up their records and show who was in that, or ask these SORCs to keep their own log of who was there that day. It's getting to this point. This initially was introduced. I know this was done years ago. I think Kevin might have been here when they had it done before. I know Smith was. But when we were doing videos, I started sending things to Chairwoman Evans saying that we had a problem with the video and this and that. And then we had a discussion. We decided to go forward with the post-board report. So we've made it now into something that is somewhat helpful, partially helpful, and now that we're sharing it with McCoy and others, hopefully we're going to have some action on it. But these things like taking attendance, I mean, it gets the absurd. Now we have Deb McCoy asking us to start logging the case names and NYS numbers.
and what's
problem.
wrong with it? Yeah.
I mean, we're there to do a job, and this is starting to interfere with Hernandez case that there was this particular problem, and we want that brought to the DEP's attention. Because I mean, number one is usually the one that gets stuck doing everything. You switch facilities, you go to 5 facilities, number one is always going to get a case. Other commissioners may not get cases. So you're going to have more cases, you field all the questions, you're trying to make post-board notes, not just from yourself, but to other commissioners. You're trying to keep attendance for what could be, 20, 30, people at the end of the day. So I would suggest that we just take the SORC's name and that we direct staff to make note of particularly, and I've already done it. I know Commissioner Elovich has done it. I've asked them.
It's redundant, Jim. I mean, they have a list of all the postponements. They have a list of every inmate. They have a list of every postponement, why it was postponed, and we have a record that we make with the stenographer on the transcript. So all this redundancy that keeps going on is wasting the time that we could be devoting to reviewing the case and conducting the interview.
I agree. And for that reason, I will suggest that the uniform format that the facility staff develop includes the name of all the staff in location with the commissioners and at the facility, points at which they've switched, and the identifying information about any particular inmate postponement or case that requires a note. I think that makes sense. Your point is well taken. This is something that's already being done. This is something that there's already a record being created for.
And I'll since Commissioner Bill Smith is not here, I'll say when we were told, or when this consolidation or merger or whatever you want, Doc said they had all this staff compared to the staff that the parole staff had. So I don't see where it should be an issue. And the other thing is that I would prefer them to give us a sheet. Some facilities already do that. They already have,
very nice.
They come in, they have a sheet of who's serving on the other side, they already have it typed up. So if we could do that uniformly, that would be very helpful. And that way in some ways I'd like to have a record of who I'm dealing with, because if something goes wrong, then at least I know who was in the room with me. So I have no problem doing that, but to start writing down, or to continue to add to the list of names of people, it can just take too much time. So.
Chair, I would suggest two things. One is we have to have a way, especially after board meetings, when an issue comes up and there's a consensus, to basically get out a binding email to all the ORC staff, such as all ORC staff henceforth must announce themselves when entering and leaving a room, so that there's a record. So when that kind of stuff comes up, we should have a way to immediately address it, so it just doesn't become one of these problems that drags on for month after month after month that doesn't get resolved and may create some legal issues with us. I also think we should probably try to come up with a consensus on what they want and what we would like to see in their post-board reports, so it's uniform throughout the state, and hopefully the two reports will complement each other with the information that we have, so that you and Deb McCoy can adequately review them and make whatever decisions you need to make.
Okay. I like that suggestion. So this will be an item that we will discuss again next month as old business, and in the meantime I'll make some inquiries about the format of the docs reports, and again reiterate our desire that we get all of them and not just reports from the SORCs who are particularly conscientious. Thank you. So again, any other recommendations, something that should come out, something that should be added to, let me know. Okay. The medical parole report. By law, we have a requirement every year to provide for the governor and the legislature a copy of what we've been doing with medical parole. That report has been produced, and we are awaiting final approval before it is published to its anticipated audience. And as soon as it is published, I will let everyone know so you can review it. I talked about some of the statistics from it at last month's meeting, and they're still contained within your minutes that you reviewed today from last month. Facility staff training. Everyone should have now a copy of the official DVD that was created with the assistance of our commissioners Ferguson and Elovich, in addition to senior staff in docs, to train the staff that prepare for the boards on how to do it, how the law requires that they do it, and how we prefer that they do it, so that we can conduct our interviews efficiently and have accurate and complete information. So now everyone has it. It's an excellent training. I urge everyone who hasn't seen it in person to review the video so that you know what we are telling the staff to do, so that the expectation is out there. The deputy superintendents have all been trained, for program services have all been trained, or I believe most have been trained. I hope new people that are being moved into that position are receiving this training after the fact. And the SORCs that were in place at the time of the training, where the commissioners were going around to each hub, have received the training. And now it's being pushed down. So we will continue to follow up on their progress with that. But we have the DVDs now for everyone here to see. Let's move into new business, please. We are still working in earnest on trying to get a formal training that hopefully we can do by video conference on a Thursday or Friday on special conditions and on board actions. But I did want to highlight a couple of things that I've noticed in my travels and in my office duties that you should all know about. The first has to do with the condition about civil confinement. I usually travel with my condition list, but I don't happen to have it today, so I can't give you the number, which number it is on the sheet, because or in that number, and it has to do specifically with a condition that someone be considered for civil confinement. But there's a process, as I understand.
Yeah, that condition that you're speaking to, I believe provides for I will not be released until such time as I've been evaluated by OMH. But that's only for those individuals who have hit a release date and that release is pending, or rather the review that is underway already and it's in process, because you don't know what OMH's true level review process is going to result in. And after that review process has played itself out, if OMH does believe that this individual is an appropriate person for Article 10 processing, they have to refer the case to the Office of the Attorney General, and the Office of the Attorney General has to decide whether or not the case goes forward with an Article 10 proceeding. The board itself cannot identify a case for Article 10 review, nor can they direct a case for Article 10 review. That's only to hold the individual's release on a CR in abeyance, pending the Article 10 process playing itself out, because everyone who is coming up on a hard and solid release date has to, and has a qualifying offense, has to be referred by the department to OMH for review. So it's automatically occurring. If anyone who falls under the very strict definition of who's qualified to be considered under Article 10 of the mental hygiene law is being evaluated, that group cannot be expanded through the exercise of discretion on the part of the parole board at all. So it's only to hold the individual's release in abeyance, much like the special residency condition or the special condition that's used for individuals who need to have their sex offender risk level established. It's in that genre of condition. So.
And because I get them from time to time on my desk, we get them in Albany from time to time, would it be fair to say that probably that condition should not be on the sheet of conditions that we're seeing at the time of the interview?
There are many conditions on that sheet, and we've discussed this, that I believe we should remove. There's also an issue that's on there, and I'm glad we're speaking about special conditions. There is, as we have expanded, as you know, the new conditions, the residential treatment facility condition, the RTF 220, and the special housing, or the residency condition, the SOH 220, for individuals who will be, or most likely will be subject to the Sexual Assault Reform Act condition, which is Executive Law 259C14, which is you shall not be within 1,000 feet of school grounds. There is the old, and for those of you who have been around with the board for a while, there is the old special residency condition, which is I shall not be released until such time as I propose a residence. That is a condition.
That's 28.
I think it's 28 or 29 or 29, 30.
Well, we don't do 29 and 30. The field does that.
Now, I just want to remind you of that, because I have seen a number of cases where it has been recommended to the board before the release of the individual, where for the imposition of the general special residency condition. That condition should only be imposed by the board after the field has done, and I'm just reminding, just so we know, and you know, people watch these things publicly, so so everyone knows that condition should only be imposed after the field has undergone an exhaustive investigation of all the proposed residences and has, through memoranda, through their chain of command, apprise staff of the results of their investigation, the fact that there is no viable residence, and for this reason are requesting the board to consider the imposition of this condition. It then comes up through operations, through the department to Lorraine. Lorraine reviews it and then presents it to one of the board members. It should not be imposed at the facility upon the recommendation of the SORC or ORC. I just want to remind you of that.
And
okay?
I do, and just so you know, for everyone who works with me, I think I always say it out loud to the facility staff, you cannot impose 29 and 30. So I always see it, they recommend it, I tell them they can't do it. It still is happening.
Yep.
So,
and to your point,
okay.
and to your point, Chairwoman, I believe that because many of these conditions are on this condition sheet, we have with so many new people coming in to this business of the conditions, and well intended, they're just seeing these conditions and thinking that they're appropriate, and this is the appropriate time to put it on. So I think we should reevaluate that sheet and rework it. Work with program services so they know what we're doing, and so that we can take this confusion out of it.
So let me ask you, Terry, because one of the recommendations from the facility is 38, which is that you can't be released until you're assessed your level. Is that one we shouldn't be putting on, or is that,
that can be put on?
Yeah, I've been putting that on.
Yes,
Okay,
that's appropriate there.
Okay.
That's appropriate
Right.
at that level.
Okay.
Yes,
Right,
because
20.
they will know. Facility staff know that the risk level hasn't been set yet. They know that the case has been referred to the Board of Examiners and then it gets referred to the court, and that we have to wait for a court date. I will say that the courts have gotten, I think, from what I've seen in this process, very, very good at having their hearings conducted. There was a period of time when there were a number of offenders subject to the Sex Offender Registration Act who were out there under the category of P, which means pending. And that's why we came up with this special condition, because this was years ago. The board, in concert with the old Division of Parole, felt that it was not good public safety to have AP out there, particularly when so many other laws were now coming on the books that attached so many other things to your sex offender risk level, such as the Sexual Assault Reform Act's applicability, the e-stop condition. It used to be just the Registration Act. Now you have other pieces of legislation that say if you are a level 2 or a level 3, if you're a level 3, then this has to occur. So it didn't make sense any longer to let people be in the community as a P when if they were risk leveled at a 3, the most severe. Now all of a sudden everything changes and the individual's already out in the community. So that's why we went all to that. But that is an appropriate time at that facility, and those are appropriate people to make the recommendation.
And as the chairwoman said, in Albany, I don't think any other office, we do get those recommendations to impose 29 and 30. So they do come through our office.
They
do. So I know I signed a number of them, and you have, so.
They would have them in the city.
Yeah, they come to Albany.
And Chair, this would go along with what I was suggesting before. I know the SORCs and the ORCs regularly have meetings because they've told us, well, I'm going to bring this up at our next meeting. If there's a way that we can keep track of these 2 or 3 things, and then we send it to Deb McCoy, who then distributes it to all the SORCs to bring these 3 or 4 points that are commonly happening mistakes, so that Commissioner Hernandez does exactly what she said. You know, I heard her several times this week telling people.
Everybody hears me.
You can't. Yeah, I hear you late at night when I'm in bed. I hear these voices. I still hear the lambs cry.
And Commissioner, to your point, it is, the reminders are good about how to do things. We have so many things to do now when it comes to preparing cases for consideration, preparing cases for release, the laws that we have to consider in someone's discharge plan. It's very complicated. So the reminders, I think, are always good. And Deb McCoy is very interested in.
And we don't want to make mistakes. And I think we know how difficult it is for them. We want to make their jobs as easy as we can by helping them when we find errors and mistakes to point out, like, don't do this.
And sometimes I don't put it in the report because I don't want to shame them either. Because I don't. Some of the SORCs and the ORCs, they do an outstanding job. They do the best. They want to learn.
Yep.
They want to do. Then of course we have the flip side of people who really don't have a lot of interest in doing this. So sometimes I don't put things in the report because I just want to, and I think I put in my report, I've already addressed with the SORC. So that's me telling them, and sometimes, because I don't want it to be a blame game. I don't want people to feel like that we're picking on them, and we had that conversation a couple of board meetings ago about bullying. I don't want anybody to come across that we're criticizing them, because some people are doing the best that they can. So I just try to do those reminders and, off the record without writing it down, so.
Okay. Well, I will begin a process to revisit the condition sheet with doc staff to see how it can be best updated, so that the staff in the facility are only presenting and being presented to present to us recommended conditions that are appropriate to present to us at the time of the interview. And also follow up on a process by which decisions that we make that should be binding on facility staff make their way to facility staff. And I do see an effort by Dep McCoy to do good, coherent, comprehensive memos to his deputies at the various facilities when things need to be tightened up and when information needs to be shared about something that needs to be clarified or changed.
And related to this, Chairwoman, Deputy Commissioner Herzog, too, who's in charge of community supervision. And, Tom was once with the Division of Parole. He, too, has an interest in how conditions are imposed, particularly special conditions, and the point at which they are imposed, because he, like the rest of the board, recognizes that there is no utility in subjecting releasees to special conditions that don't make real sense. Mm-hmm. And he, too, like the board, wants to work at developing a way where at the time the case is before the board is presented with the information it needs to to establish what conditions are truly necessary. And then with the ability of field staff to still impose special conditions subsequent to the merger, allow field staff to fine-tune the supervision plan once the individual is out in the community, as opposed to ladening the individual perhaps with, no, I shouldn't say ladening, applying special conditions and then having to utilize that process of coming back to the board and saying, could you please lift this special condition? We don't think it's appropriate.
And I think that it's good, perhaps that we, get more training as a board, because I know, I even with the determinate sentences, I take the time to go through, and I use the compass in that area, because sometimes the compass says that there really is no need for reentry substance abuse treatment. So, but yet I'll go in and the facility has lined them up all the way through. Really having them do anything. So what I do, I'll have urinalysis testing, and I let the field decide whether they're going to go out. And and that's something with the history. I know we don't get those histories anymore, the evaluations attached to the determinate sentences, but I found it useful. Because just because somebody smoked marijuana 20 years ago in high school doesn't mean that they need a drug program now that they're going out. Mm-hmm. So I think all of us too, especially some of the newer members, it would be very valuable for them to have new training, because just because the facility recommends it doesn't mean that we need to impose it. So.
And I think I have to.
Some people do though.
What I've been doing now for probably the past year is there were so many facilities blanketly doing 1 through 8 that I've stopped unless it's very evident from the instant offense and their current conduct or tickets that they have a drug problem. I don't impose it anymore, because I know that when we submit them for drug testing and the officer goes to the reports, the officer can impose it. Yeah. Because in my 10 years, I can count on one hand, if not two, the amount of times officers have actually asked me to remove a condition. So we'll impose things because staff may be recommending them, the alcohol and drug program. They'll go out there and they don't have that problem. So now we're wasting state resources and we're setting that person up to fail because that person's saying, I don't have a problem, I'm not going to this program. So I've for about a year now, I've not been imposing those conditions unless it's overwhelmingly evident.
Right, and I have to see it as well. And the other issue with the driving, I'm still seeing them imposing no driving for no reason.
Mm-hmm. And 6, too. Working on licensed premises.
So
how many offenders work in restaurants?
Yeah.
A licensed premise.
Yeah.
We see 6 and 7 too frequently. Upstaters,
there's no transportation
unless the offense was relevant to the operation of the motor vehicle.
Right.
But we see that routinely. And I agree, we have to have a critical eye on what's appropriate, what's not.
Yes.
You cannot accept the recommendations blindly.
No, and I agree with you. And from the meetings I've been in, I think you'll concur that I am sensing now as both field staff and the ORCs are getting more comfortable with the documents we're working with, the Compass instrument, particularly now since we're working on the Compass 8, which is also the case plan. The field is working on their process of updating that, and Mr. Herzog's been in his job now, I think almost a year. I do think in the next year or so we're going to start to see a real collaborative change in the way conditions are imposed, and I think it's going to be really, really good because of the experience that Mr. Herzog has had with the old parole board and the old division of parole, where he's positioned now, and all of us working together. I mean, I really believe that we're going to see a huge change, and it's going to be way for the better.
Yes, and it is already coming
Yes.
together, I have to say. First and foremost, we always have to have a critical eye. That's our job. We're there to have a critical eye about every one of those factors that we have to consider and every document that feeds into those factors. That's never going to change. But because their executive team works very closely together, I witness it, I'm seeing the fruit of it bearing out.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that they're working together behind the scenes, and by they I mean specifically in this conversation, Deputy Commissioner Herzog and Deputy Commissioner McCoy, because they understand how their teams have to work together on either side of us.
Yep.
You've got one on one side of us, one on the other side of us, and now they're acting in a way that's supportive of one another through us. But they can't work around us, so they are actually working with us on both sides. I feel it happening. And I agree with you, it's only going to get better. But we have to stay at the table, and we have to stay vigilant. And that's why these reports, at least for the short term, continue to be necessary, because they keep us all informed.
Yes.
What's going on with one another. So we will have training. I mean, that is something I'm committed to, and committed to getting community supervision as well as program services involved in these trainings. The board prep training was a perfect example. It was a perfect way to start those kinds of collaborations. It's working out beautifully. We are still to reap the benefit of it. And so we just go down the list. Special conditions, including sex offender conditions, which they're almost worthy of their own training because it can get so complex. The next item is board actions. And with that, we will have a good training upcoming. I'm working with the director of the training academy, who is new to his position. He's working with his staff to help us try to solidify those trainings. But I just wanted to make this note on the board action point. In the meantime, our staff in Albany, our staff in New York, and our staff in Buffalo keep track of the incoming board actions. Each location as a main office for our Board of Parole, New York, Buffalo, and Albany, get regional board actions. They get them by region, so to speak. New York certainly has the bulk. So they get board actions for one commissioner's signature or for three commissioners' signature in bulk every week. If we are asked during the course of a board in one of the area offices to sign a board action, we have to make sure that one of our significant support staff in one of those three offices, and it's Ms. Lewis in Buffalo, it's Ms. Valdez in New York City, and it's Ms. Hamlin in Albany, they must know that that's occurred, because that will then be a board action that's not being logged anywhere, because it's coming from the field to us directly sitting in a board as opposed to through the staff. So if you are asked to sign a board action in one of the area offices by the area office that's submitting the board action, please make sure that their support staff know to let Ms. Hamlin, Ms. Lewis, or Ms. Valdez know that that has occurred so that they can log it. Because we need to know how many we're getting every month and what types we're getting every month, and keep some record of our own of the kinds of decisions that we're making on these board actions.
I signed multiple ones in Rochester, and I don't know if they're ever tracked.
So now you know.
Wow.
Yes.
Now you know.
And I know,
And we just did 4, at least 4 in Rochester.
Poughkeepsie
in
does it,
Rochester, too.
Syracuse will sometimes bring
Wow.
stuff in, yeah, okay.
And I did mention to the bureau chief in Poughkeepsie
Poughkeepsie?
specifically that we
Yes.
needed to do that. So hopefully she's having her people do that.
Okay.
But just do it every time. Every time they come to you and you're doing interviews, you're not in your home office signing them as a regular matter of course. Or more specifically, anytime you sign them and you're not in Buffalo, New York, or Albany, please let them know. They must let one of those 3 individuals know that it's been
I'm
done.
gonna get a copy.
And that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Okay.
Or they should be faxing it to one of those.
Okay,
Would
well.
you agree?
Yeah,
That would be helpful to
I would
you?
love to get a copy after they're signed.
I'll get a copy. I mean, I can do that.
Do,
Now,
do
I
all the
don't-
board members have your contact, the 3 persons' contact information
That's what I
for
was gonna
phone and
ask
fax?
for.
That you
Yes,
do.
thank you.
We will make sure that.
Who is accounting for Utica? I sign things in Utica. I don't know where they go after that. I give them
Think
back
Albany.
to the same person.
That's
Gail
what-
McGurk.
I think that is Albany.
And
I turn them into Gail McGurk. What she does with them, I don't know.
okay, Jessica should be logging those. We
Do you
think.
get them from Utica?
Okay.
You do.
Do you get a,
Should be, but I don't.
okay,
You don't?
sign
I don't get a lot of them because they're
That's
right
okay.
there.
Well,
But they'll
smaller
send me some
office.
if they need 3 signatures. But they should all be coming to Albany.
so after you sign them, they need to make sure that she gets
I'll
them.
mention that to Miss McGurk in Utica.
Please do. Please do. Because we need to have our own way of logging and accounting for the board actions that we take as 1 commissioner or as 3.
Can I suggest that we also know, because I'm relatively new, can't say who knew anymore, but I am not certain at this juncture which staff person would need to have which area
We will get
office
you that.
reported to.
We will
Yeah,
get you that.
okay.
Do we have specific people in the other offices, Syracuse, Rochester, Utica, Poughkeepsie, who are responsible for getting those and bringing those to us? Because, I mean, maybe the thing...
It sounds like it.
Yeah,
If
there
you're
are
dealing
people-
with the same person.
I mean, maybe the
Same
thing to
person
do
all
is
the
to
time.
just send these people an email and tell them that when they do this, they're to fax a copy of
Well,
it
that's,
to...
and I agree with you. That should be the starting place.
Right.
But when you're getting them, you just need to make sure. I just
Double
ask
check.
that you ask the
Okay.
question.
Yes.
Does our staff know that we're signing this? Do they have a copy of it for our records? That's all. Just in the short term until we can be
Makes
sure that everybody's on the same page.
So Utica should be sending it to Jessica.
As-
Once I'm done with
we
it.
believe so.
Is that the way it's supposed to work?
We believe so. And what
Okay.
we'll do is get every board member a copy of the list that shows you which person should know about which region. Okay?
And I do want to compliment, for anyone who's going to see this, the board actions are coming back a lot more complete than they used to. And I think, and I've actually had conversations with the area supervisor, the bureau chief or whatever, but I know that some of the ones that are coming into Albany are coming in with more information, and I appreciate that. And if they're not, they're going back, so, okay. All right.
Again, another fruit from just collaborating, communicating, letting people know this isn't enough at a higher enough level for it to work its way down. Okay. The next item is the board interviews the week of Veterans Day. Now, I didn't go back to 2012 and 2011 and all of that. I could do that. But in looking at 2013, it's clear to me that it just so happened that there were no legal holidays on a board day. It doesn't happen a lot, I gather, but this year it will happen. It will happen the week of that Veterans Day is being observed on a Tuesday. Now, as you recall, we made the agreement for 2014 only that this election day we would move our boards to Wednesday and Thursday. I am proposing, for the sake of good fiscal responsibility, as well as the fact that we know that, well, I was told, staff will be paid double time if they have to work on a holiday. Our salary isn't based on holidays or any of that. However, the other staffs are. Now, the correctional officers who are working on a holiday, they're working on the holiday. They're getting whatever they're getting. I'm talking about the facility staff, and I'm talking about the staff in the area offices for the sake of economic responsibility, as well as just ease, because I don't know what machinations they will have to do to decide who comes in on that holiday and works to open up the buildings for us and to provide the paperwork for us and to stay with us until we finish. I am proposing that the following week as well, the week of November 10th, that we do our boards Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yes, if you're making a motion, I would certainly first it and second it. How do you do that?
So we
I don't
have
know if you
a
can first it and
first.
second it, but you can
We
first.
have a first.
I will absolutely
motion?
I
I'm
motion
lucky
to
to
do that.
I'm off this year.
I
Well, I'm
motion
happy to
that.
have your second.
I'll second it.
Is there any
motion.
discussion
Yes,
or questions?
we should be cognizant of the fact that at our meeting on July 17th, we decided just the opposite. So we are thus reversing a previous vote, just to be clear,
Okay, and I'm okay with that.
okay?
Any other discussion or questions? Okay, there's a motion on the floor that we move our boards the week of November 10th, which is that Monday, to Wednesday and Thursday, the 12th and the 13th. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Are we, the week
abstain
before,
for that.
didn't we move the boards to Wednesday and
Yeah.
Thursday?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
you
what you
did.
just said.
For
Yeah.
election day.
The election day.
And that is not a legal holiday, by the way.
Okay.
Any nays? Any abstentions? I abstain. Then it appears that motion is carried. I abstain. Any one abstention. All right. Meeting dates, time, and place for 2015. This is our first meeting in this space since I've been chair for a
Very
little
nice.
over a year now. I don't know if you ever met here before, but I think it works very well for our purposes. Does anybody want to add anything to that? I mean, I think that if we planned on meeting here for 2015, it would suit our purposes. Parking is available, security is available. We have ample space if we do have members from the public who want to come and attend our meetings in person. So I would suggest that we continue to meet here. Anybody have any discussion they want to have on that point?
I would agree. I think it's much more convenient, and thank you for being responsive to the concerns of the board members when we discuss the locations. It makes sense. This is a docks facility. We're docks, so this is home, I guess.
And thank you to our Western New York and Central New York counterparts, because it's not as convenient for them, I don't think, but thank
Well, it
you.
depends on what day of the week we're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about. We're talking about, ideally, the third Monday, as
And
it
that's my next point.
traditionally used to be. I think that makes sense. If we deviate from the third Monday, that throws a lot of question marks out there. And my point is, of course, just to be totally clear, that is to accommodate boards that are, say, Utica, east and south. If you've got boards out west, it's a big problem to get here for a meeting. Okay? I've been through it, you've been through it, let's put the cards on the table.
Yeah, and I think even on Mondays, that may continue to pose a problem. Before we were posting our videos, we were doing them by video conference. Of course, the public was always free to come in and participate from wherever there might be a board member viewing, and that would be the way we would proceed in the future. But I don't have a problem going back to Mondays. So that's the next question.
Yeah.
Is there consensus that we will go back to Monday afternoon, noon or 1?
One would be preferred.
One.
Because I know that travel time is important. We don't want to get you on the road too early, and we don't want to put you out so late that you'd be arriving to wherever you need to go for the next day's board really late. So can we then take a motion on, in 2015, hosting our board business meetings in this location on the third Mondays, starting at 1 o'clock? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussions or questions?
I would just add, Chair, that it supports your previous notion that fiscal responsibility. All of us had to come here stay an additional night, charge the state for hotel and additional per diem. Mondays, we're all on the road anyway, going to where we have to go, so we know Monday is the day that the state's going to have to pay expenses, and that our personal schedules are interrupted, so.
It makes sense. Can I just add something? Is there any way, just in being sensitive to the members that may have a Western New York board that are from Western New York is there a way to do video conferencing here or
I
not?
would say there is a way.
Okay.
The only thing we would have to do, if we made that available, we'd need some advance notice. For example, if I can, let me back up. If I can give you a schedule for next year where you would know where you were for the whole year, then you're in a better position to say where you can attend the board. You're in a better position to say, okay, I can be in person in Albany on this particular month's, at this particular month's meeting, because you know where you're going to be. If there ever is an occasion where there are several Western New Yorkers, let's say east of or west of Syracuse, who are going to be in that region that didn't want to travel to Albany, and we might have problems with a quorum in light of that, then that might be a month that would be appropriate to schedule a video conference. However, what you have to bear in mind is you will have to be in a space that has accommodations for the public. Because if you are in another location as part of this board business meeting, as I understand the law, the open meetings law, you will have to have it available so that a member of the public who wants to watch can come in the room where you're at. So the security concerns, the parking concerns, the comfort and accommodation concern has to be addressed. And we have to have that notice out and available to the public through our public information officer. We do post for the year our schedule of meetings and the location. If it changes, if we cancel a meeting, we've got to get a notice out. If we change the locations of where the public can come, we've got to get a notice out. So it can't be the kind of night before type decision. If you can't make every meeting, I understand. But that's why we have the ability to have a meeting if we have a quorum. People are routinely excused, and I failed to put on the record that the members who are not present today have been excused for the purpose of today's meeting. So it may be that way. You may be the only one because of a vacation schedule or because of where your board is. You may be the only one that isn't able to travel. If the group necessitates, I would only say if the group is big enough where it makes sense to go to all that other trouble to change the schedule, to make it public, to video conference, that would be the situation I would recommend it in. Not just for one random person here, one random person there, because again, if all the other commissioners who have other home offices wanted to video conference, they would all have to be posted, publicly noticed, make available space for the one or two or even no person that ends up showing up. So,
Okay.
Chair, I would just add, Terry, a while ago you were going to get us a copy of that statute.
Sure, I'll get you.
If you can.
Sure.
Because, I would disagree with the assessment that we have to, because some of us, what we did, and this is really during the merging period and when the statute was changed and different authority was given to the board, there's a lot of things going on. Some of us were calling in when we were out sick or on vacation to phone in on meetings. So obviously I'm not going to open my house as a public forum.
No.
But I think if we're having a public meeting and the main host of the meeting is making available to the public, it would seem that any satellite offices, I would say, would be unnecessary.
You'll see it. It speaks to any site where members of the body that are conducting the meeting are present. If they are using video teleconferencing, that site itself has to be.
So then we would say you could never phone in.
That phoning is just as problematic because the idea is being present when people are having a meeting. You can see people.
Because if there was an emergency meeting or something along those lines.
Well, the emergency meeting is, we're talking about regular board business meetings where we conduct business. If there is something that, and you're not voting on things and you're not doing regular business meetings, if there was an emergency that came up and the chairwoman needed to reach out to all of us and discuss something with us that's going on, that's not what falls under the open meetings law. When we're having our regular business meeting, that's what's subject to the open meetings law.
So it doesn't matter if this is the regular location where the main body of a meeting takes place. You're saying any participation?
As I read the law, yeah.
Any other location?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, and when you get a chance, if I get a copy.
I will. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right. Okay, so that will be our agreed upon schedule for 2015, and we'll produce that as quickly as we can and get it out to everybody and get it out to our public information office as well so that they can publish it for the public and on the DOC's website.
Those facilities, usually we have, 90 to 100 interviews. I believe that green should be separated from the rest of the group because the board is so voluminous. We've talked about that for a long time. Nothing's ever actually been done about it, but it's something that we should definitely look into because I think those facilities clustered together it is probably too much for one board.
Right before, Chair, you came on, we were actually working with Chairwoman Evans, Green, and a couple of us in terms of basically assessing, since the consolidation, how it's working. And obviously we have some boards where you have 30 or 40 interviews, and then others. At that particular board, I've had as many as 113
It's a
scheduled.
big board, yeah.
What, the two facilities combined?
It's a
Yeah.
Green is too big. Green
huge.
is too big to cluster with all those others.
Green
Well,
is huge.
I had it last week, Sally, and who was with us?
Wow.
Sharkey.
Uh,
80.
80.
2 full days. Get ready for it.
Just
Yeah,
for that one.
And one of the things I think that
Wow.
makes it, the only thing that's made it manageable is that since the merger and the transition and training of the new ORCs, there's so many postponements. That's the only thing that brings the number down to.
Wow.
When I say 80, that's the net shakeout. The pre-board.
See, it's just
was-
unbalanced
the
because there are
pre-board
certain boards
was
that only.
109.
The New York City
Have
board
30.
notoriously only
Yeah.
has like
30.
Yeah, and so that is one that could probably use somebody else or use another facility because we don't have the other part of this is we can't break out. We have to keep it the way we have it because we don't have 19 members,
Right.
so we can't create a separate another. We
But
can't.
we could maybe put Hudson, Brookwood, and Columbia and Coxsackie at the Bedford board and keep Green where it is. I mean, I don't know if logistically that's possible.
I mean, one of the things that we had been talking about, and we had previously, obviously we haven't done that in a while, is we were tracking the numbers for a couple of months to basically get a good sense of, because there's anomalies. Like we had Greenhaven a couple of months ago that was up until 7:55 a.m. preparing the board for 8 a.m. And they came in, and I think over a dozen cases had to be postponed, so their numbers the next month would be artificially inflated. So we were tracking numbers over a several-month period, and we were trying to determine which places, not only numerically but geographically, we could accommodate a switch on. So maybe that's something that should be looked at.
Okay, and I think we can do that. Ms. Hamlin has been very diligent to try to get us accurate counts. We have made a request that another memo go out to all the facilities so that they know to get us their counts as best they can more than 10 days in advance. So that you can have accurate numbers a week in advance of your interviews. So we can use what we've developed over the last year at least to look and see where the numbers tend to be high and make some further changes. But I just wanted to mention that because your feedback is essential. You're out there doing them, I'm out there doing them, and it helps me to have a sense of where you think these changes should be made and how we can further improve our schedule. So I'm going to get out the last draft of our facilities that I think have now, with the schedules coming up, you'll see the latest formation. We still have some improvements to make, some things to add, some things to maybe shift in terms of the order that the facilities appear in. I would ask that you note those on your drafts and get those back to Lissa and myself. And we'll just keep working on it. And we will take upon maybe a work group to look at the numbers and think about how we can maybe reconfigure that makes sense. All right, now, is there any other new business that anyone wishes to bring up? Yes.
I would just add, as long as we're talking about numbers, Jessica gave me yesterday, because I know Greenhaven right now has a lot on its plate. They're in lockdown and they have a very serious situation going on, but we didn't even get a pre-board report until yesterday. We're not consistent with getting these numbers, and now that the commissioners are burdened with scheduling the board, I submit that we need to have the SORCs in charge of the board email the lead commissioners by noon on Wednesday. Because Otisville yesterday called up, nobody around. Hopefully someone will get back to you tomorrow. Wallkill, same thing. They didn't have the numbers. Greenhaven hadn't even submitted their pre-board report that was due the week prior. So us running around the state doing the boards, then coming down, trying to track down phone numbers, who's in charge, getting transferred 10 times, and then maybe not finding somebody, and then maybe they have the information, maybe they don't. I think this is another thing that we have to set up a procedure on and have the SORC in charge. Email the lead commissioner, because they have that information. It's in their pre-board report, so they know who we are, what their anticipated numbers are, so that we can schedule, so that the commissioners and the stenographers can make appropriate plans to be away for 2 days or 3 days or 1 day, whatever it's going to be. And we can't do that without that information. So just in terms of the numbers, we can't really figure out and set up the boards until we get those. And it's been, I don't know if the other commissioners are having the same experience, that it's a challenge in trying to get the information, or it's just me.
What you suggest is ideal. I'll tell you right now.
I keep calling.
I'll tell you right now, I'll be off the board before you get that fully into effect.
Oh, stop it. We've been more responsive than that, have we
No,
not?
it's not going to happen. And also, my experience in calling, you've got to call Thursday morning. In fact, I've already done my calls at the hotel this morning for next week. And if you wait, say past 2 or 3 o'clock, forget it, they're gone. You won't get anybody.
I did mine
I think
yesterday.
the net effect, the lead has to, you've got to ferret out the information, preferably on Thursday morning. Earlier, the better.
Yeah, and I do it on Thursday.
And then even when you do that, you can't get everything that you want. I'll ask the question, how many files have PE equals CI? I've talked with people, they don't know what I'm talking about. They confuse it with max date, they call back, oh, look at the files, call you back. They're talking max dates. I said PE equals CI. So even that's difficult,
But I mean, since this is a known entity, they know that we need this information every week. Is it really necessary for a commissioner to call up 5 different prisons to tell them to give us information that we know that they need? It should just be emailed to us every Wednesday. We'll go through the information. We'll determine what board's going when, because, and remember, part of the reason that we're doing this is to be fair to the facilities, so that a facility with 7 cases doesn't get stuck waiting all day long behind the facility with 40 cases, so that facility incurs unnecessary overtime. So we're doing this to try to be fair to everybody involved, especially the facilities and especially state finances. So I don't understand. I mean, I agree with you. Unfortunately, it takes too long to get things done. I think Chairwoman Stanford has been incredibly responsive to a lot of things that have been brought up by the board members. But I think at this point, we've done so much to accommodate the ORCs and the SORCs, well beyond what was expected, anticipated, training programs and everything else, personal time on training programs, weekend time on training programs. This isn't a lot to ask. You have to give us this information anyway. You shouldn't have to wait for me to call you to tell you to give me the information. It's silly.
I take the responsibility to do that because I want the coming week to go well.
Right.
And if there's a problem, you want to know about it up front.
And
I take, excuse me,
Go ahead.
I take my numbers for the early facilities. I tell the later facilities on the phone, here's what you've got ahead of you, okay?
Yeah.
And in addition, I send out a pre-board report. Now, I don't have a lot of time to be doing this stuff. I've got other things in my life too. But I do that, and I think it's helpful to... should we have to do all of this running, is your question? I don't think we should. But from a practical standpoint, my experience over 10 years is I've got to.
Yeah, and I do it for the same reason, so that the panel knows what to expect, because the numbers that Jessica gets are not always the accurate numbers. Sometimes they add people, sometimes they take people off. I do it the same way. Also, for overtime, the overtime has been such an issue. I always call and make sure there's no overtime issues. I call so that I can set it up so that all the different panels that are coming, approximately what time to be prepared to have the offenders, inmates available so they can go online, so that the correction officers have the people. Sometimes they have them sitting there all day long when we've already told them we're not going to be seeing you till 11 o'clock. They have them out there 8:30. I don't personally think that that's necessary, but that's what we try and do. Sometimes something happens with a facility that's going on, and we have told people estimating a time when they're going to come, and it's 2 hours later because something has happened with the facility prior to. So it's an estimation. We do it to accommodate people. We do it for time saving and overtime issue purposes, so that no one can complain that we're dragging things down. It's not an exact science, but I do know that we all make an effort to let people know ahead of time what's going to happen. And I make sure I CC you so you know, because sometimes the staff emails me back and says, there are no overtime issues, and then we find out that you have had conversations with people who have they say there's but meanwhile the staff...
After the fact.
Meanwhile the staff, I have it in writing that the staff has said, because that's one of my questions, is there an overtime issue? Nope, no overtime issue. So I do the best I can, but you know that. Okay.
Yes. Commissioner Smith?
I just had one question kind of along the scheduling. I believe it's next week. Why is the board starting on Monday at noon?
Why?
Yeah. I think is it the Albany board?
Because
It's just the Albany board.
It's just the Albany board because it's a religious holiday, and we have 2 members of that board that celebrate a religious holiday, and therefore we thought it made more sense so that we could make sure people were where they needed to be for their religious holiday.
There was some other.
Yeah, on occasion it has happened historically where something is happening. We have elderly parents and sick relatives that we have to be certain places and.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
Sure. The other thing, I'll just back to the other part of the conversation is that just in terms of the scheduling and getting the numbers in on time. It's a known entity. We know that we have to do, and everybody's trying to use stenographers, we have to schedule interpreters. There's a whole bunch of different factors that have to be included in it, and I think it just makes sense to have them do it. I mean, there was a time where for a brief period, we were getting the numbers which we were told we would get, well a week in advance, and then we're not doing that, and it just adds a lot to the confusion, so unnecessary.
Well, I'll continue to follow up on that and try to get an agreement from the Department of Corrections to have the SORC's email on the Wednesday prior. Okay. And I should be able to report on that, and we should be able to report whether or not it's taken effect by the next meeting.
I did want to bring one thing up. I had sent you an email. I guess Upstate has hired a translator specifically for the purpose of translating. Mm-hmm. And the question came to me whether it was, I had sent you the email, and I'm sorry to bring it up so short notice. If that person's not going to be completing the report, but I know we have had issues. We don't want to have any appearance of impropriety. But that person that's going to be at Upstate is going to be helping the ORC complete the report, do the translation, but she's not going to be doing the report. And then she's going to be serving as their interpreter for the board. And is there an issue with that? And they specifically have hired this person to serve as a translator at the facility.
Not Ernie.
I guess not.
Ernie's the best.
I wouldn't see where there's a problem.
Okay, because I made it clear that there couldn't be somebody that they worked with every day, that they sat there and, we had said that we were not comfortable. And
they're hard to provide interpretive services.
Okay, but they're not going to be working with that inmate in a capacity as
They're not on that caseload.
Right.
Exactly. They're just providing interpretive service. I think it's fine.
Okay. All right. Any other new business? All right, then. Is there a motion at 11:31 to enter into executive session, and at the conclusion of executive session, adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you.